Hello friends, and welcome to Figure Study, where once again we are appreciating the form in a transforming toy that I'm not entirely sure how to categorize. Today we're taking a look at something special, and not like the hyperbolic special. This is something very special. This is the Mechaboy 3D, which is a combination design production project between Drew Wise, who's responsible for the concept and illustrations that led to the Mechaboy 3D, and David White, who is responsible for the engineering and production of the physical toy. You may be familiar with the name David White, you may not. If not, he is a toy designer who has been developing his own robot toy line under the blanket name Mechazone. Evangelist has done a number of videos on David White's toy designs. I think it's the Explorer is his most recent one. Unfortunately, I've not been able to get my hands on any of his toys up until now, but before I go off on too much of a tangent, what makes the Mechaboy 3D truly special, I feel like everything that is done the way that these toys are done, designed and produced by one person, these are not mass-produced toys. He basically 3D prints the pieces, sands them down, finishes them off, in some cases paints them if need be, and assembles them all himself. All the work is done by one guy. In the Mechaboy 3D case, it's two guys. But this is as close to what I guess you could call like a textbook art piece of anything else I've covered on this channel. As of this recording, there are only 11 of these in existence. There was a very limited production run done on these, and I was lucky enough by camping out on the page. I was lucky enough to get one for myself, and yeah, they were sold out within like 5 minutes. It's just wild. Mechaboy 3D is basically the closest thing I've got in my collection to a piece of, it's a toy that transforms, but it's as close to being like textbook sculptural as I think anything I own, just because of the fact that it's pretty much been made by hand. Yeah, you could argue that the parts were 3D printed, but I mean, come on, this thing was designed, finished off, painted, everything by hand. So, with all that exposition out of the way, we can get to the toy proper. And this thing is very simple, but very, very, very cool. It's obviously meant to evoke the look of the classic Nintendo Game Boy. Even the packaging, which is a pretty simple, baggy and card that talks about how you do stuff, but just gotta point out the artwork for that card is pretty fantastic. I mean, that is classic Game Boy packaging right there, and I love it. I love it so much. This looks so good. I also like the fact that because this is just a bag with instructions, it's actually going to be really easy for me to keep. It's not going to take up a ton of space. And so yeah, the Mechaboy 3D itself is a Game Boy, and it's simplistic details, but it does have some nice details in it, like the fake little speaker box there, the different buttons, which unfortunately the buttons don't actually push. I mean, they don't really need to, but that would have been kind of a neat touch. One thing that does kind of stink is it looks like some of the dyes or whatever kind of seeped out of the buttons there onto the white plastic. I think it did a little bit on the gray too, but it's most noticeable here because of the red, but still, it's fine. Can't get too upset over something that wasn't mass-produced. It looks great. It's this very simple color scheme of just gray, red, and white, and a lighter gray. But it works really well, and the detailing around it is very evocative of a classic Game Boy, with the exception of the back, which does not have the kind of grid along the bottom that was part of the battery case. Yeah, I don't know why I still remember that, but that's how it is. And this is the transformation mechanism, which we'll deal with later. It's a very nice, solid, little, almost chibi-looking Game Boy. And on the bottom, you actually have logos for both Drew Wise and Mechazone, which, at least I think that's Drew Wise, the logo for Drew Wise. But yeah, I think it's cool that they kind of worked that in a spot that you wouldn't necessarily notice, but it is there in case you were looking. So, got most of the details covered there. It's got Mechaboy etched in there, and you can see it's version 1.0 on the screen there. And I'm assuming this is some kind of title screen for a video game that it's meant to be playing, and the cartridge itself can come out, and it does a pretty good job of looking like a kind of a Game Boy Advance game. There's even some molding on the bottom there to make it look like there's like a chip in there, which is very cool. I mean, it's just a solid gray block with like a label on it, but still, it works, and I like how it's designed so that when you slot it in, it just makes the screen look like that's what's on it. And the label is actually glow-in-the-dark, so just gave it a, oh wow, you can already see it kind of glowing. So let's get the lights. And there you can see the game screen glowing, and it's a really neat effect. I like how that actually does look like sort of like a backlit Game Boy screen. It's a it's a simple idea that ends up working really, really well. And yeah, it's already starting to kind of lose its glow power, but still, it's neat. I like it. All right, so aside from the little smudginess on the buttons there, the only other thing that's a little bit not disappointing, but just, you know, that I could kind of nitpick about this is the quality of the image for this looks a little bit fuzzy, but that may also be intentional, so I'm not really sure how nitpicky I can really get about it. And then the very edge of this label feels like it's peeling ever so slightly, which has me a little bit worried about the future, but I don't know. Hopefully it'll be okay. So, with all that good stuff out of the way, let's do a quick size comparison. Here is the Mechaboy 3D with the Amiibo and a Titan's Return Deluxe, and you can see it's not the size of a real Game Boy, but this is actually bigger than I was expecting it to be. I knew it wasn't going to be the size of an official Game Boy, because comparatively those things are kind of huge, but I was honestly expecting it to be like a little bit, like maybe like this tall. So yeah, it's a much bigger toy than I was expecting, which is fine because I'm all for that. Yeah, no, it's a good size. All right, now for transformation. I am not going to speed this up because it is incredibly simple and quick. What you do is this here, you pinch this together, and that will actually, you can see there are like these sort of notches in here on both sides. When you pinch that in, it allows you to slide this track down. And by sliding that track down, you activate the mechanism, which makes everything else move. So, see if we can do this with everything on camera. And ta-da! Now we've got arms and legs. And for the face, just pop out the cartridge and turn it around. And there, you've got the face with the nice etched Mechaboy name on the top there. Slide it back in. And there we go. That is all it takes for the Mechaboy transformation. And it's simple, and realistically, yes, I know it's kind of dumb, but it's dumb in a way that I absolutely love. It's so silly and so fantastic. There's not a whole lot of new detail in this mode, mostly just the thing up top, the face, and then you get a little bit of detail with these arms and legs. See, the arms, they're suitably robotic. It's a little bit of a shame, I guess, that the arms, like the elbows, don't move, but I mean, given just the production story behind this and the transformation that needs to happen, I can kind of understand not wanting to have one more variable, because like, as it is, you want to make sure things are lined up before you transform everything back, because if the arms are out, then they'll get stuck and that'll probably screw up the mechanism. So if you gave them elbows, you'd probably run into the risk of like the elbows not being lined up properly, and yeah. It would be nice, but it really doesn't bother me. And the legs are actually articulated a bit more. Like you can swing forward and they have knees. And those knees can also swing the other way, so you can kind of like fake a walking pose with this guy, which is pretty cool. And the problem is he's got one knee bent backwards, but that's how it goes. And unfortunately, just because of the design, you can't really get him doing like a real walking pose, because just the way the feet are done, you just can't hold that kind of a position. Which, again, it's fine. It really is fine. I'm more than happy with what this thing does. Like, it didn't even need to have leg articulation, but it does, and that's cool. Just the simplicity of the swinging out arms is nice. And I like this face, too. It's like very video games without being a specific game. And it also kind of gels with the time period when the Game Boy first came out, where there's something very 90s about this. Like just the sunglasses and the fact that it's like, it's a handheld game system with a dude. I love this silly thing. It's so simple, but like really cleverly simple. Oh, and as with the other label, you can totally do the glowy face thing, and it works even better with this. Like that looks fantastic, and that really does look like a backlit game screen. I really, really love that effect. It's not necessary to enjoy the toy, but it's just a really neat kind of bonus that they included. And if this thing eventually loses its glow-in-the-dark power, it'll be disappointing, but it'll be fine, because it still just looks really cool. Alright, put those lights back on. So this thing is, it's simple, but it's a simple that I really like. Like the very simple swinging of the arms and legs, the kind of simplistic robotic look of the different pieces has kind of like an old wind-up toy vibe to it, which I'm totally into, and it works really well for what they've designed here. And just for size comparison, there's not too much of a change, but with that added height, you can see now it's about the same height as a Titan's Return Deluxe. In fact, let me adjust his legs real quick. This is actually in a walking pose, which was reducing his height a little bit. So there you can see, yeah, even not counting the top of the cartridge, he's about the same height as a Titan's Return Deluxe now. Just because of the maybe inch and a quarter, inch and a third that you get from the legs popping out. Yeah, it's a decently sized toy, and it's just, oh, I love this thing so much. So the Mechaboy 3D, as I interpret it, is pretty much meant as a sort of love letter to people who like video games and toys. In that sense, I think it works beautifully. It's simple enough that it's fun to play with without being overly complicated. I don't feel like I'm going to break it because it's actually pretty sturdy, and also because it's so simple there aren't too many parts that I have to worry about. The robotic bits are very evocative of like a classic wind-up toy. It's designed to look like a Game Boy, which is just amazing. It's working on like 2 tiers of nostalgia just from the Game Boy and the classic robot toy thing alone. It's just fantastic. I think that David White is planning on releasing more of these in the future. I don't know if that's going to be like, if it's going to be a different version with like slightly different stuff going on. I don't know when that's going to happen. This is all just speculative based on what I've read on the blog. But as I understand it, there will be more Mechaboy 3Ds in the future at some point in some capacity. Unfortunately, because of the limited run of these, I can't really point you to a place where you can buy it right now. This is really more just a haha got mine video, but it's very cool, and I absolutely encourage you all to check out David White's stuff. I will include a link to the Mechazone page in the description below. He's currently, again, as of this recording, doesn't have any figures up for sale in the shop at the moment because everything's sold out, but that can always change in the future, and should change because he is planning on releasing more toys in the near-ish future, I think. So yeah, that is the Mechaboy 3D. What do you all think? Have you ever heard of David White or Drew Wise before? Are you familiar with either of their work? Have you messed around with any Mechazone toys before? Have you messed around with any 3D printed toys before by independent artists? What do you think about this thing in terms of being utter nostalgia bait? Because, I mean, wow, this thing ticks a lot of boxes for me. I don't know about you, but like between the Game Boy thing and the robot thing, I just was like, I have to try and get it. Totally worked on me, so I wouldn't be surprised if I'm not the only one. But anyway, that is going to do it. So, thank you everybody for watching. As per usual, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Any combination of those 3 would make me a happy Rob. And remember, art that seems like it's specifically made for me, even though it wasn't, but it still totally seems like that, is more than meets the eye.